Good evening, you're watching AWANI International with me, Faye Kwan. Here are our top stories tonight. Trump's first 100 days and what lies ahead. And Trump says there's a good chance of a China trade deal. More on this coming up. We're starting off today's show with a look back on US President Donald Trump's first 100 days in office for his second term. Now, one of the defining moves so far has been his reciprocal tariffs that's triggered a full-blown trade war with China, with both sides slapping tariffs of over 100% on each other's goods. Now, you can see the impact here. The S&P 500 was down 8.3% from the day Trump returned to the White House, and it continued on a decline, together with global markets in Europe and Asia as well. And it plunged right here in April when he announced his tariffs. There was, of course, a brief rebound when he introduced a 90-day pause, but the volatility hasn't let up. And according to the US Commerce Department, the economy shrank 0.3% in the first quarter of the year. That's the first contraction in 3 years. Now, as a result of all of this, polling in the run-up to Trump's 100 days shows him posting historically low approval ratings. In this graph here, we see his ratings have been sliding in the last 3 months or so. Factors, of course, include his handling of negotiations to end the Russia-Ukraine war, as well as the controversial leaked signal chat involving his administration. It's even being reported that his approval has dropped to the lowest level for any US president at this stage in office in the last 80 years. Still, he continues to maintain strong support from his core voter base. Now, earlier, I spoke to Associate Professor Faye Kwan from Wayne State University about this. Let's take a listen.
So we know that, of course, about 43% of the country voted for Trump, and we find that the numbers, although slightly less than that right now as far as approval, really, I think, reflect the fact that his support from his voters is really unshakable. It remains to be seen if some of those sectors are going to change their minds, especially farmers and others for whom tariffs that are imposed overseas are perhaps going to have a crippling effect. But I would say that the tariff issue correlates to his approval rating, perhaps mostly because of the chaos. One day he calls for tariffs and then he increases them and then he scales back from them. And so that kind of volatility may work well for the stock market. But again, we find that for those who are small business investors, some of their life savings even have been severely impacted by this. And it doesn't really bode well for a sense of confidence, a sense of stability, and a sense of security when there is a president that is this erratic. Time and again, if one listens to his supporters as they're interviewed, they firmly believe that he is going to bring back manufacturing. It will improve the economy. They're saying, as with the cases of tariffs, that it's going to just take time. And they do not expect a short-term visibility of anything. He's going to be out of office in 4 years. He doesn't carry really any moral hazard to any of this. It is highly likely that what he has promised will not come to fruition.
Another feature of Trump's first 100 days in office has been, of course, his heavy reliance on executive action. Figures here on this slide show that he has signed a staggering 141 executive orders, including 36 in just his first week. Now, this marks an unprecedented use of presidential authority in modern US history that's far surpassing his predecessors, including Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush. Now, I also spoke to Associate Professor Faye Kwan about what this could signal for the next 100 days and what to expect heading into the midterms. Let's hear more.
I would argue that perhaps the more telling focal point for us to see now is what seems to be the continuing deterioration of American commitments to the rule of law, whether that is on the international stage or whether that is even on the domestic stage. If the United States is not willing to even uphold the international system of law that it helped create and enforce, sometimes with force, then that is going to create one of two possibilities, which are not mutually exclusive. One is a sense of deep consternation and anxiety about what will the world order look like without the United States supporting it. And the other is it's going to create a sense of opportunity that with the United States now retracting from that role, who else might step up, if anybody? Or are we moving into a situation where it may look like, for at least a while, a kind of Wild West, where the wheeling and dealing that occurs is going to be more of a function of big power geopolitics and the imbalance when it comes to smaller countries, much as we saw perhaps in the 19th century and even beyond, before that? Or are we moving into something entirely new? And again, with that, a sense of unpredictability.
That wraps up our coverage on Trump's first 100 days. Stay tuned for more international news after the break.
Berita hebat untuk pelanggan Astro. Kini anda boleh stream Prime Video di Astro tanpa charge tambahan untuk 2 bulan.
I will not leave them.
Hiburan tanpa henti dengan blockbuster global.
Aku dibaca. Ya, dah burun dah.
K-shows terhangat. Amazon Original.
Amin.
Dan sensasi tempatan. Prime Video. Terbaik dengan Astro. Nikmati akses selama 2 bulan tanpa charge tambahan.
Aku pernah hampir kehilangan mak, tapi aku bernasib baik sebab dia.
InsyaAllah, mak akan dapat tengok air rama besar jadi orang berjaya.
Kata-kata tu sentiasa dalam fikiran aku. Sebab tu aku belajar bersungguh-sungguh. Aku nak jadi macam dia, bantu orang dan bawa harapan kepada keluarga. Kini, giliran aku pula untuk memberi harapan kepada mereka.
Doktor akan pastikan ibu awak sihat semula.
Sama macam dia.
Aziza memang sudah menjadi budakku. Sekarang giliran suamimu. Assalamualaikum, Ustaz Quadra.
Welcome back. The US and Ukraine have signed a deal heavily promoted by US President Donald Trump. This deal will give the US preferential access to new Ukrainian minerals and fund investment in Ukraine's reconstruction.
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Ukrainian First Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko were shown signing the agreement in photos posted on Sviridenko's Facebook page. She also wrote on X that the accord provides for Washington to contribute to the fund. The two countries signed the accord in Washington after months of sometimes fraught negotiations, with uncertainty persisting until the last moment with word of an 11th hour snag.
US President Donald Trump says there's a good chance of his administration reaching a trade deal with China in a News Nation town hall. However, just hours earlier, his own trade envoy, Jameson Greer, acknowledged that no tariff discussions between Washington and Beijing were underway.
We were ripped off by China, but we were ripped off by everybody, but really by China. They were the king of ripping off the United States. Now they're not doing any business here because I don't want them to do business. So I set a high tariff. I don't want them to do business. Now, will we make a deal? There's a very good chance we're going to make a deal, but we're going to make it on our terms.
Trump's comments came shortly after Greer confirmed no official negotiations with China were taking place. In a separate interview with Fox News, Greer said that Washington sought a fair trade relationship with the world's second-largest economy.
While potential trade deals are in the works with India, South Korea and Japan, US President Donald Trump says he is in no rush to finalize these deals, claiming that the US is already benefiting from the tariffs currently in place.
Well, we have potential deals with them, yeah, but I'm in, okay, I'll tell you this. I'm in less of a hurry than you are. We are sitting on the catbird seat. They want us. We don't need them.
President Trump claimed the US is in a strong position with over 100 countries eager to make trade deals. He acknowledged the political risk of his approach, noting it could cost Republicans control of the House in the midterms, but said he would stay the course. His remarks came amid the Commerce Department's reports of the U.S. economy shrinking by 0.3% annual rate during the first quarter, the first plunge in the past 3 years. Trump blamed former President Joe Biden for the market decline, asked for a little bit of time for recovery, and claimed his tariff strategy was already working as American companies move operations back to the U.S.
Chinese representatives at a WTO meeting refuted U.S. accusations of overcapacity, the act of producing far more certain goods than the global market needs. Other than that, they condemned the U.S. for violating World Trade Organization or WTO trade rules.
At the WTO's Committee on Subsidies and Countervailing Measures meeting, Chinese representatives said there is no universally accepted standard or method for assessing overcapacity, and supply-demand imbalance is the norm. The US and other WTO members contradict market economy principles and the logic of globalization by hyping up overcapacity and making it an excuse to create anxiety, to smear and suppress China. Chinese representatives also pointed out that the US reciprocal tariffs disrupt global trade and hurt the interests of developing countries. At the same time, China acts as a stabilizer for international trade growth and consistently stands with developing members. China's representatives also said that the US actions deviate from market economy principles, severely disrupt the normal order of international trade and investment, and called on WTO members to strengthen cooperation, oppose US unilateral bullying practices, and jointly safeguard the rules-based multilateral trading system.
The U.S. Senate has failed to pass a Democratic resolution to end President Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs on Wednesday. The resolution drew a 49-49 tie, falling short of the majority needed to overturn Trump's decision.
In a rare rebuke from within his own party, 3 Republican senators joined Democrats and independents to back the resolution against Trump's tariff policy. However, Senate Majority Leader John Thune then quickly shut any opposition, calling in Vice President J.D. Vance to break the tie and block the measure from future consideration. The resolution was introduced by Democratic Senator Ron Wyden and co-sponsored by Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, an outspoken critic of Trump's tariff policy. The resolution was widely viewed as a symbolic gesture, since as it stood little chance of advancing in the Republican-led House and would ultimately face a veto from Trump.
In other news, the head of Europe's Airbus is calling for a return to tariff-free trade in the aerospace sector. He joins a growing chorus of U.S. industry leaders urging relief from an escalating tariff war.
CEO Guillaume Faury warned the dispute could lead to only losers, though current tariffs have had limited direct impact on supply chains so far. In Washington, an aviation coalition is pressing lawmakers and the White House to lift tariffs and instead enforce the 1979 treaty brokered by the World Trade Organization. The CEOs of several companies, including Boeing and GE Aerospace, have directly raised the issue with US President Donald Trump, who has said tariffs will boost American jobs. European officials said aerospace sectors in the US and European Union are each other's biggest customers, even though they are home to bitter rivals Airbus and Boeing.
That report wraps up AWANI International. Stay tuned for our reports on the rivalries, strategies and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com for more and be sure to follow our social media accounts at Power Affairs. That's all for now. I'm Faye Kwan. Thank you for watching and good night.